Hey guys, welcome to Foodies Live, streaming from the Sub-Zero Wolf Kitchens in Scottsdale, Arizona. Today's show is all about corn, and we're joined by Chef Josh Hebert from Posh Restaurant, also in Scottsdale, Arizona. So he's going to show us a few different kind of interesting recipes, kind of off the beaten path corn recipes. And if you have any questions, please post them in the chat room or on Facebook and we'll get them answered. So with that, I'll flip it over to Josh, who's juggling.
Hi everybody, happy summer to those of you who are in Phoenix or Scottsdale. Keep relaxing and enjoying this beautiful only 100-degree weather that we're having here. We all know that this is the best July in the history of the world. So we all know summertime means one thing in the world of food, and that's corn. Corn is like the greatest ingredient in the world. Corn fuels our cars, it fuels our tummies. You can eat corn with ice cream. Oh gosh, there's a million things you can do with corn. The settlers grew this as like their #1 food crop, loved every ounce of it. This is corn. I mean, corn, it's even fun to peel or shuck, as people say. This is the greatest activity in the world for kids. Keep them busy for hours, right? Every kid wants to shuck corn, simply put. There's three main types of corns that all of you are used to, depending upon where you're living and where you're from. And the best corn is always the corn that you buy close to your house. Corn and its natural sugars convert rapidly after it's been picked. So it's going to be at its sweetest when it's the freshest. So the fresher you can get your corn, the better it's going to be. Some of you are used to white corn. Some of you are used to dark yellow sweet corn. And some of you have what everybody likes to call salt and pepper or peaches and cream or whatever you can get that is the combination of both. I'm a big fan of peaches and cream. That's what they call that where I grew up. So I like to enjoy eating that fresh. You can have corn by itself. You can dry it out and make popcorn if you're really into it. It's really the greatest food stuff in the world. But we're going to do a couple of unique recipes today that any of you can execute and have fun with and cover the entire spectrum of sweet to salty to appetizer-y to dinner-y to just full of yum. First thing we're going to do is we're going to do a traditional Mexican street corn dish called the elote. And the elote can be done a couple of different ways. First and foremost, you want to start off with just really, really fresh corn and a little aluminum foil. So we're going to take one of these stalks here, and we're going to knock off the little stem end with a nice sharp chef's knife. Cut off the...
How can you tell if the corn is fresh?
Well, you know what? You'll see a lot of places at the grocery stores when you go to, they'll have a little strip down the middle pulled off or pulled down a little ways so you can see it. You want big, bulging, firm kernels of your corn. You want your silks to be nice and clean and still kind of want to stick to the corn husk a little bit. And you don't want to see too many, rotten or, not rotten, but deflating kernels of corn as well. Juicy, vibrant, you could smell it. It should smell really sweet and really fresh. Remember, most of your taste comes from your sense of smell, so don't ever feel guilty walking around the grocery store looking at things going, especially when it comes to things like fruit, watermelons, that good fresh flavor. Things should smell crisp and clean. So we're going to take this great piece of corn here. We got this from a local producer. I don't know the exact farm, so I bought it from my produce company who peddles it from someone else. But we're buying this corn local not just because of its freshness, but because we don't want genetically modified crap. So speaking of that, and I'll only speak of it for a brief second, is that corn, soybeans, peanuts, and some dairy products have some of the most high prevalence of genetically modified seeds or seedlings or base ingredients in the country. Corn, because of the way, I'm not a scientist, so I'm not going to get this totally right, but corn, because of the way that it pollinates itself, is very, very heavily crossbred. It actually cross-pollinates itself in the field. I think that has something to do with how the silks stick out or whatever. But because of that, a lot of the corn in the country now has basically morphed itself into genetically modified corn. And why we don't want to consume this, or why we should talk to our government and make our government tell us more about genetically modified products and hold some of those companies that do that accountable, is because these products have never been tested. They've been put into the food system. They've said, well, corn is corn is corn. Well, we don't know about that. See, people seem to be having a lot of allergy problems, and it may be coming from the fact that these things are genetically modified. So make sure to buy stuff from local farmers that you understand, especially these beautiful things like corn. Not just so you're getting a healthier product, but you're also getting something super sweet and fresh. And I'm just going to go ahead and kick my soapbox out of the way and get off of it for the rest of the show. All right. So what we're going to do with our elote is we're going to take 2 pieces of aluminum foil here, and we're going to set some corn in the middle of it. And then we're going to go old-fashioned here and not watch our calories or our cholesterol or any of that other stuff. And we're going to put a little butter on here. A little butter.
Not Paula Deen style?
Just a little butter. Never ask a French guy how to use butter. Anyway, so we're going to start with that. And I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of salt. Just a little bit of salt. I'm going to go with kind of a non-traditional method just because I like the acidity, but we're going to do a little bit of lime zest over the top of that too. Give it a little zip and some fresh flavors. I have my little fancy microplane here to do that. And then I'm going to use a little bit of my homemade chorizo spice blend.
What do you have in there?
Oh, the chorizo spice blend is cumin, paprika, chili powder, teeny little bit of cayenne. I put just a skosh of ginger in mine just because I like the clean, cleansing flavor that comes with the ginger too, even though it's not super traditional Mexican. Nice. I'm going to take this and fold it up. Roll it together. And then I'm going to cook it in some simmering water real fast, just for a couple minutes. I just want to start to bring the sugars out of the corn, and we're going to finish the rest of it on the grill. Or in this case, we're going to finish it on an open top burner. Both work pretty well. I have some simmering water over here for some corn stock that I'm making. We can get to that later. We'll discuss the corn stock when we're making our soup. So we're going to let our elote sit and kind of just simmer real carefully. If you notice the sound of the plane, that's my security detail, making sure everything's okay.
Naturally.
Naturally. Then I'm going to turn my burner on over here, nice and high. If I can figure out how to do that, there I am. Perfect. All right. So after we're gonna use the fancy television technology and pretend that I let this simmer for a few minutes. I'm going to take it out, let it sit, so it's cool to the touch.
Chef, we have a question. If you don't have a grill or you have a flat top, stovetop, can you put it on a cast iron pan?
Yeah, you could put it on a cast iron or one of the, kind of the grill pans. You could use a George Foreman grill if you want to, just compress it. There's a lot of ways you can do this. And the cool thing about doing recipes over and over, we all know that corn's in season for a couple months in the summer and we love it. One of the cool things is you can kind of make adjustments and tweak your recipes a little bit here and there. So we might be using an open burner top for us, but if you're doing something like a George Foreman grill at home, try it one way and then try it another way the next day if you make a little adjustment to it depending upon what you observed or what you saw. And that's kind of a fun way to go about playing with your recipes or toying and making simple little adjustments here and there. I'm going to put a touch more butter in this and just kind of play with my corn for a few minutes. Let it, whoa, hey.
Whoa.
Aggro corn.
Getting crazy.
I'm going to let it kind of tinker around, move it to a different spot on the burner, let it get kind of even heat. It should get a little teeny bit of color on it. I don't want to burn it, but I want a nice little char, especially in the spots with the lime zest and the sugars. Any little real sweet spots are going to kind of caramelize up a little bit more.
That looks awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of a fun summertime dish. And again, you could use this on a grill. You could do it on your burner at home. You're up for just about whatever kind of, I don't know, improvising you want to or need to do. While we're doing that and letting that kind of cook and finish, we're going to make a second recipe, and that's going to be a corn fritter. Corn fritters are downright yummy, crispy, crunchy, sweet, hot corn. And it's a great way to do a little appetizer or even as a vehicle for another dish. Again, the texture is amazing. So what we're going to start with is we're going to start with our dry ingredients. I have here 1 cup of flour, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and 1/4 teaspoon of sugar. Set in a bowl and set aside. And we're going to take our fancy Japanese mandolin over here, or Ben Reiner as they're called, and I'm going to take a couple of ears of corn.
Ben Reiner?
Ben Reiner, Japanese mandolin.
Oh.
Some people call it a Benny slicer. Some people call it a Japanese mandolin. Some people call it a flat slicer. These are much less expensive and a little bit safer than the French mandolins, which some people call the French torture tool because they're a little dangerous.
Oh.
But we're going to go ahead and just simply set our mandolin to kind of its widest setting and use it to scrape off all our corn kernels. This is a quick way to go ahead and dekernel the corn, so to speak. And then we're going to take our leftover husks. We're going to drop them in simmering water, leftover ears, not husks, sorry, and drop them in simmering water so we can make a corn stock for the soup that we're going to be making later on in the show.
Oh, nice.
It's like breakfast cereal, snap, crackle, pop. All right. So we're going to do this to about 3 to 4 ears of corn, depending upon how big they are. And this is going to be the base for our fritter. Fritter, even though it kind of sounds like the idea of a donut batter, it's not nowhere near as thick, but nice and rich and crispy. Give me a few seconds to rattle through a few more of these ears of corn. Now, if I had a 7-year-old here to take care of all the corn for me, that would be optimal. Somebody go down the street. There's got to be a school close by.
Yeah.
This is Scottsdale. So I think because these are fairly fat and fresh ears of corn, I'm probably just going to need to use about 3 for this recipe. Now always be careful when you use these flat slicers and mandolins. I don't want to see anybody holding them like this. This is how you cut yourself. Flat against the surface, sliding down. You always want to support. That's why the handle's here. And just flat. That way, if for some reason the item sticks or slides, you're hitting the blade with the fat, meaty part of your hand and not the tips of your fingers. There are many line cooks in the world who have gone to the hospital with quick trim injuries there.
Ugh,
so
yuck.
Now I've got my corn nice and charred. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to put that back into my foil with a little of that same seasoning, a little bit of the melted butter. And I'm going to keep that warm on the burner for a couple minutes until we go ahead and serve that. Now back to our fritters. I'm going to go ahead and take my corn and I'm going to add all my corn to my flour mixture there. Sweet corn is just one of those things that's even good raw.
Oh, really?
If it is, you know that you're getting really good corn. It should be nice and sweet and sugary. Definitely a sign of freshness. The starch is good for you too.
Ah.
Makes your tummy settle. All right. Then we're going to take what we have here is a 1/2 cup of whole milk, 1 egg, and we've melted a little bit of vegetable shortening. And I'm going to whisk that all together. We've got a nice little homogeneous mixture here.
Chef, could you use, I noticed that you added it to flour, could you use like cornmeal or anything like that?
There are, you will go frequently find recipes with cornmeal that do have cornmeal. It makes kind of a nuttier, sweeter batter. This is going to be a little lighter and airier. But yes, to answer your question, if you Google different recipes online, if you don't want to use this recipe in front of you, then you'll find a couple of recipes for something very similar with cornmeal, yes.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to take that off the heat, and I'm going to put a non-stick pan onto medium heat, and I am going to quickly pour everything, my liquid mixture over the top, and I'm going to take a spatula here and fold everything together real gently so that the flour doesn't get too lumpy, but I don't want to stir it so that it gets all knotty, like you're not trying to take the gluten and make it super chewy like a bread loaf. We want it to be a little more cake-like or donut-like. And then you're going to set that aside once you've kind of folded everything in. You want to add a little bit of salt. Again, same thing. You'd add a little lime zest. Lime and corn have a nice little natural affinity to one another. If you want to spice it up in any other way, you can add any battery of spices from maybe a little fennel seed or chili flakes, garlic, cumin, whatever you're kind of in the mood for. And then you just want to let that set aside for about 15 minutes or so. Let it rest just a touch. And I have a batch here that we've already rested. And I'm going to use, you can use any nature of fats to cook this. You want to put it in a pot with about a 1/4 of an inch. It's not really a deep fry as much as it is a little pan fry. You can use vegetable oil, canola oil. I'm going to go super southern style, and I'm going to use bacon fat.
Oh, wow.
You can also use duck fat if you're really feeling the mood. If you want to be like super Frenchy guy or girl, use duck fat. So I'm going to take this mixture that I have. I'm going to stir it up a little bit, form it into a cake, and let it set up real nice. Give it a little stir there, make sure it's going to stick together. It's doing that well. Maybe add another one in here. Yum.
Some people might say jummy.
Jummy. Very jummy. Now I've got my elote. While that's simmering away, frying, I'm going to take my elote, now that it's been resting in all those nice juices, I'm going to grab myself a plate. Now the traditional way elote is served in Mexico is on a stick from a stand somewhere, or a guy driving around on a bike or a cart selling nice fresh hot corn. And it's always served with mayonnaise. So I brought some nice spicy mayonnaise to help accompany what we're doing.
Nice.
We have a little cool chili mayonnaise. So again, this is a pretty traditional street food from Mexico. Yummy and tasty. And we can eat that and enjoy it. Again, if you want to kind of garnish a little more with some more lemon zest, lime zest, please do. That extra little kick of acidity is always pleasant. And there's our first dish, Mexican street corn with mayonnaise.
That looks awesome.
Thanks. Tasty. And vegetarian. So, we've got our fritters, and it's taken about 1 minute to 1.5 minutes on one side. You're going to look and check for the color and some firmness. You want to be able to flip them over real good without having them fall apart. So I'm going to give another 30 seconds or so, and then give them a real gentle flip. This is another one, because corn is so sweet, it likes kind of refreshing, I hate to use the term fatty elements because that sounds bad, but that refreshing fatty mouthfeel. So again, mayonnaises are a good way to go. You can use sweet ingredients to complement corn, like vanilla sometimes works pretty well. I have used a Thai sweet chili sauce and made a mayonnaise out of Thai sweet chili sauce. So I'm going to use that for our sweet corn dipping sauce, our sweet corn fritters, so to speak. Nice. So we'll get ourselves ready with a little bit of our sweet chili dipping sauce, and then some sweet corn fritters.
What went into that mayo?
That mayo was, I made a mayonnaise with 1 egg and about 3/4 of a cup, 1 egg yolk, 3/4 of a cup, I'm sorry, aioli, not mayonnaise, aioli. Of 3/4 of a cup of oil, canola oil, 1 egg yolk, a teeny little bit of garlic, a splash of lemon juice, and then about 1/2 cup of store-bought sweet chili sauce. We use like kind of a spicy garlic sweet chili sauce that actually is kind of available at higher end Asian stores. The most typical brand is a brand called Mayploy that you can get almost anywhere. This brand has a big kind of hit of ginger in it that I really, really like with a lot of things. So that's kind of why we went with this one. I get this at my local there's Asian markets and then there's Asian specialty stores. This came from the Asian specialty store called the House of Rice, not very far from where my restaurant is, and we go there all the time for teeny little knickknacks and things. So we love those. We're gonna have to, sorry to jump off camera. One of the things we're gonna wanna do with these corn fritters is we're gonna wanna let them rest for a second after we take them out of oil so that they're not super greasy. So I'm just gonna take a napkin. You can use hand towels or newspaper, or paper towels or something like that at home. Make sure that you don't have served greasy corn cakes, corn fritters. So you'll see what I'm talking about here. You have a little more time on that side, but so far so good. These are gonna have a nice bacon fat flavor to them as well. Again, you don't have to use bacon fat. There's any one of a million fats you can use. If you're French, you can use duck fat.
Tasty.
You better believe it.
Can you use olive oil even though it...
Yeah, you can use olive oil. It might taste a little, either a little greasier or a little more peppery, but you can definitely use olive oil. You can't take extra virgin olive oil to that high of a heat. You want this to be about 360 degrees, a really good kind of like pan frying temperature. It's a little too hot for good extra virgin olive oils. So we're gonna sprinkle a little salt on top of those corn cakes. And of all the things today, this is the one you have to worry about me eating all of before I leave. Oops.
Piece broke off.
That turned out pretty good. Another thing that always tastes great with corn is basil. Basil's a great garnish for that dish. Nutmeg is a great garnish for that dish. A lot of different things you can go ahead and do. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna make sweet corn sorbet. Yes, you can have corn for dessert. Sweet corn and vanilla have a natural affinity, but sometimes sweet corn is so good on its own that you can just make a straight sorbet. Sorbets are very simple, although they require a little bit of a delicate balance between the amount of sugar that you add, or the amount of simple syrup that you add, rather. One of the things that makes or inhibits the freezing of ice creams and sorbets is the amount of sugar that exists in them. Now, unless you have a little chemist kit at home and you're deciding how much your final product has before you freeze it and making adjustments based on percentages of this and that, you're probably going to have to fly a little blind or borrow recipes like we do. So what I've got here is I've got about 1.5 cups of simple syrup that I made 3/4 cup of, I made a larger batch than that, but equal parts sugar and water, brought up to a quick simmer, whisked and stirred, and then cooled. I also steeped 1 stalk of lemongrass in this to give this kind of a slightly different flavor. Add a little background bone to add a little backbone or background flavor to it while we're building our flavors. It's kind of a neat way to go. And again, one of my favorite accents with corn is a little lime, so we can put a little lime zest in there as well. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to need to take probably about 1.5 cups of corn. I'm going to say that's probably 2 ears of corn, just in case. Again, if we have bigger ears, it might be less. If we have smaller ears, it might be more. Depends on how big your ears are.
Yeah.
That was
I don't
funny.
know why that's funny, but it is.
Beth's over here laughing. That was pretty fun. It was pretty funny. I said it and I didn't even think about it when I was saying it. Right? Depends on how big your ears are. Do your ears hang low? Do they wander to and fro? Can you tie them in a knot? Can you tie them in a bow? Yes, I graduated kindergarten, folks. You can tell.
I guess that makes shucking more fun.
It does, absolutely. All right, so I'm going to grab my handy dandy Ben Reiner once again. Go ahead, scrape down, scrape down, scrape down. Corn stalk. Scrape down, scrape down, scrape down, scrape down. Somebody ask a question if you want me to stop saying scrape down, scrape down. Haha, I don't have enough water in my corn stalk anymore, so now it's just a depository for used ears.
What does the corn stalk turn into? Is it like a milky sort of?
No, it'll just be it'll be kind of like a very sweet corn infused flavored stock. It's not like chicken stock where you want to cook it for 6 or 8 hours, or veal stock where you cook it for a whole day, or it's just put it in there for 45 minutes, let it simmer. The flavor from the corn is going to be released into the liquid, and you could use it as a base for soup instead of using chicken stock or vegetable stock. You could actually intensify your corn flavor by adding more corn. So I'm going to take this, add my corn. I look like I have about 1.5 cups here. And I've already boiled my simple syrup to make sugar. I just need to bring this up to a simmer and simmer it just long enough to kind of soften up my corn and continue to bring out the sugars in the corn. Again, same thing. If you want to use a little fennel or fennel pollen in this, it's a great complementary flavor. If you want to add a little liquor that's been cooked to get rid of the alcohol. Alcohol does inhibit freezing, so you don't want to use a lot of alcohol, and if you do, you want to have it cooked off, but you can use something like ouzo from Greece. Again, if something's got a intense black licorice flavor, that's another complementary flavor with corn that I find seems to work pretty well. So, bring this up to a hard simmer. I'm having a really hard time not eating those corn fritters. They're just crispy and look good.
Dig in.
Dig in, right?
You're surrounded by 2 vegetarians and, well, Nico might want some.
Nico's gonna nosh on that.
Nico's gonna.
I can tell. All right, so we'll bring that up to a simmer, move it pretty hard, and then once it hits that simmer or a good boil, and I feel like that corn has been kind of cooked and shocked just enough, then we're gonna go ahead and really puree it in a blender. We have the Cadillac of all blenders here. We have the Vitamix Turbo Blend, which every chef in the world is just like, ah, like the noise at the beginning of The Simpsons. The Simpsons, da da da. Yeah, so, you know.
It should always have clouds surrounding it.
Clouds surrounding it, absolutely. The message on the chalkboard should always say something different.
Yeah.
Do 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 do. So I'm up to the right spot now, or darn close to it. I'm gonna take this over here, get rid of this top, try not to make a huge mess or break the $1 million blender. And I'm gonna go ahead. You wanna do this while it's hot, but not if it's, you don't want to fill up your blender if it's hot because it's going to move and make steam and kind of cause some issues. So make sure if you're putting something in a blender while it's hot, you're just putting a little bit of liquid in at one time. Now, I'm not going to strain this because we have a Vitamix, and Vitamix will pulverize anything into pretty much baby food. So what we have here is a liquid that looks, smells, and tastes like corn, lemongrass, a little bit of lime. Pretty interesting. Nice flavor combination. I've just put a teeny little pinch of salt because I'm one of those guys that believes salt should be in everything, including a little bit, just a hair in dessert to help magnify flavors. And then we're going to pour that into a freezing cup. Now, we don't have our freezing cup with you, but if you're like me and you got 4 ice cream makers for your wedding gifts, you're going to go ahead and actually pour this into the refrigerator, into a container, and you want to set these into the refrigerator until it cools all the way down to 40 degrees. And then once it's cooled to 40 degrees, then you want to put it into your ice cream maker as per the instructions on the ice cream maker. But you don't go from hot to ice cream maker. You have to go from hot to refrigerator temp to ice cream maker. And then it usually takes about 20 minutes or so. Set it in the freezer, let it freeze overnight, and you will have the most delicious sweet corn sorbet in the world.
Nice.
Or at least in your block.
So for those of us that don't have an ice cream maker, can you make the sorbet or?
You can. What you would want to do is you would want to make this base, and in the time while you're waiting for this base to chill, you want to get in your car and drive to a place like Best Buy or Target and grab a $20 bill, and you can buy most ice cream makers, cheap little ice cream makers, 1-quart ice cream makers for about $19.99, and it will be one of the best investments you ever have because it's kind of fun to sit and make your own sorbets. A lot of times we make tomato sorbet or basil cranberry sorbet, and all sorts of fun plays on sweet and savory flavors. And I can tell you that if you spend the 20 bucks to buy some type of ice cream maker, you will use it a lot at home, I promise. I promise.
Or just get married, apparently.
Getting married works. Like I said, I got 4 of them. And it was just, so my restaurant has 4 home ice cream makers, and we just line them all up, just turn them on. You hear them like going in the back. So
Nice.
I don't need a full-size one. I have a little restaurant. So, you know, safe stuff. The next thing we're going to do, the final recipe, is we are going to make a corn soup. Let me clean out my blender because we don't want a sweet corn soup. We just want a sweet corn soup.
Sweet.
Are there any questions from the peanut gallery yet? Anybody curious?
Well, I was curious. If you just have a subpar blender, not a Vitamix, do you have to strain off?
If you have a subpar blender, not a Vitamix, let it blend for a long time. And if you determine that you just can't get the grains fine enough, or then go ahead, strain it. You don't need to strain it through a super fine strainer or anything, but strain it through a small strainer and then go ahead and go through the cooling process. Yeah, that way you can. Sometimes people might mind that texture, other people don't, like have a little bit of the graininess. It'd kind of be like what happens when popcorn melts in your mouth. Kind of that, just a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Nothing too offensive. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to make our sweet corn soup. I have a pot here on our burner that is slightly warm. And we're going to start off using with a little liquid. And our not traditional mirepoix, but a couple of items. So we're going to start, give ourselves a big chunk of butter. It's a little warm. Add more in case you burn your butter. we're going to go ahead and improvise.
Good thing you're the improv chef.
Good thing I'm the improv chef. So we're going to let our pan cool a little bit. Since we destroyed our butter. And we are going to, since we're not making brown butter soup.
Is that how you would make brown butter?
You would.
Oh.
That's very aggressive brown butter. Not that the nutty flavor is not bad. Like I said, I actually didn't burn that. It just was definitely in the brown butter category. But we're going to just add a little butter now that our pan's cooled. We're going to keep it off the heat for a second. Butter's melting just fine now. Not creating a stir other than when we actually stir the pot.
Stir the pot.
Peter Griffin. He made it funny. All right. So I'm going to let my garlic in there, and then I'm going to take one of my, again, you've heard me say it multiple times now. I love fennel in my sweet corn. So I'm going to go ahead and take half a bulb of fennel. This is going to be the time of year where fennel's a little starchier. Fennel's at its best usually in the end of winter, early spring. So just be careful cutting. If you don't get paid to cut all day like I do, then just be gentle. When it's a little starchier, it'll be a little harder to cut there even with a really sharp knife.
Oh,
so
okay.
It forces you to push a little harder, which means if you cut yourself pushing a little harder, you're going to hurt yourself really, really, really badly. Sharp knives always help. And I'm going to take a nice little Spanish yellow onion here. Cut off the root end. Go ahead and peel the onion paper. Somebody told me the Constitution was signed on onion paper. I'm not sure. I think that could be corrected. Wasn't it hemp, actually? That's strange. Isn't hemp illegal? Either way.
In some states.
Some states. It's not if you have glaucoma.
There you go.
So I'm going to do a real quick small dice. Nico, you have glaucoma, right?
Yes.
That would explain a lot. Wait, that plane is the DEA overhead.
Uh-oh.
No, he's got his card. We're good. All right.
Stop talking about him.
Sorry. Didn't mean to throw anybody under the bus. All right. So now we've got a more moderate temperature for our pan. Our butter is melted. We have our garlic, fennel, and onions. Everybody's happy with garlic, fennel, and onions, right? Yes.
Indeed.
There we go. Good answer from the peanut gallery.
And the brown butter smells pretty good, too.
Doesn't it?
It does.
I'm not going to lie. That makes me muy feliz. Since we did corn soup, I'll have to, or since we did elote, I'll have to say it in Spanish. So muy feliz, very happy.
Muy feliz.
Yeah, do my best. So all right, I'm going to take my handy dandy spatula, get in there. Rawr. And I'm going to go ahead, drop this back to medium heat, get a little more action on it. Now that we've gotten over our chaotic moment. Didn't burn the house down, butter's safe.
We're all still here.
We're all still here. The hood's kicked on. Not nearly as smoky as when Nico's taking his medicine. And the best part is we have food afterwards. Yay!
Awesome.
This message brought to you by the Drug Enforcement Administration of the United States.
And approved by who?
And approved by Governor of California? The voters of California.
Peter
and Arizona,
Griffin.
and Colorado, and Alaska, and Michigan, and
Peter
Florida?
Griffin.
No, Florida's coming up.
Oh.
Cleveland? No, that's not a state. It's a guy on Family Guy. No.
Oh, yes.
So we're going to allow this to simmer. Just making up for my mistake of too hot of a skillet at this point. Butter.
Paula Dean would be very happy.
Of course she would. She's happy anyway.
She is.
She's an old Southern lady who's smart and cooks good. So why would you not be happy? So here's the thing. One little trick with making soups, when you hear the term sweat, sweat doesn't mean caramelize. Some recipes will call for you to caramelize something, and some people will say sweat. you really don't want to start hearing a whole lot of noise or action when you're sweating something, because you're allowing your liquids to release, or you're allowing your vegetables to release their liquids, and those are going to become the base or the fond for your soup as you add things to it. So you're coaxing flavors out of something, not trying to caramelize. Those are two totally different techniques and breed two totally different flavor profiles. So make sure that when you're doing soup, one of the biggest things I see with young cooks is they follow recipes and cook everything on high heat. There's a reason why burner knobs adjust. It's because not everything's supposed to be cooked high. So we're just going to have a nice low to medium. Our butter is melting, our onions and fennel are sweating, even the garlic's sweating a little bit. They must know it's Arizona in the summertime. Yeah. So we're going to let that sweat, and I'm going to start with about a cup of white wine. Again, if you want something a more strong licoricey flavor, you can use Pernod or Ouzo or absinthe, something like that, if you're in the mood. And then this is the point where you can kind of adjust your heat up to a medium, a little bit above medium if you want. You're going to bring this up to a dedicated simmer. Dedicated simmer. I'd like to dedicate this simmer to Nico, buddy.
Nico will accept your dedication.
Accept your dedication. You're going to record it so you can give it to your girlfriend, right? This is dedicated. Does anybody do that on the radio anymore? Remember, that was like a big deal when I was a teenager. So you call into the radio show and dedicate a song to your girlfriend. And make sure you can tape record it so you could give it to her at school the next day. That was cool. That was a way to, like, you know, what was that book? How to win friends and influence people, or how to win money and influence people, or something like.
Yeah.
How to be like a smooth talking freshman in high school. Hey baby, you want to go to the dance?
Here's this mixtape.
I got a mixtape for you, baby. These are all the songs that make me think of you. So once we've brought this up to a simmer, we're going to allow a lot of our wine. You want the alcohol to cook off as much as possible in this. We don't want a bitter alcoholic soup at all. And that's the point at which we will start to add more of our liquid. Now, if you want this to stay vegetarian, it's pretty simple. We've used butter, so it's not vegan. But if you wanted to use oil to sweat, you could go ahead and do that. And then use the cornstarch, and you're dealing with a vegan soup right up to the end. It's very, very simple. Now, the best soups that you will ever have is basically a pure flavor that you're going for. It's a reduction or an essence of something. Somebody quoted in a book once, and I love the quote. I think it's hilarious. This country, in our country, everything's all about sauce, 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 and more sauce. We like sauce so much that we put it in a bowl by itself and call it our first course, in which case we call it soup. So it's a great way to kind of idolize a perfect flavor, especially something like corn at the beginning of perfect corn season. So I have another little trick with corn, especially if I want something to be vegetarian. I am not a gigantic fan of heavy cream, especially, or I'm sorry, not especially, but except for in the case of desserts. Obviously, you like heavy cream for a nice creme brulee or whipped cream or a flan or something like that. But I'm not a big fan of it. To me, it tends to hide flavors and not mask things and not really bring out the essence of anything. So one of the things I use to thicken soups is a little bit of potato. If you want something to have that creamy mouthfeel, don't mashed potatoes have like the greatest essence of anything on the planet? That silkiness, the umami that we all love, the texture. Oh, yeah. We're going to go ahead and add potatoes to our soup to give it that. Not a lot. I've got one potato that I'm adding to this. And we're going to bring those up to a simmer until they're done. And then we're going to add some of our cornstarch. This should be a good trick.
You're full of good tricks.
Just call me Trixie. Silly rabbit. All right, so I'm going to start taking my cornstarch. And if you want to go with proportions here, if you like to use recipes, what we basically started with was 1 onion, 1 fennel bulb, about 4 tablespoons of butter, 2 garlic cloves sweat down, about a cup to a cup and a half of white wine, and then we probably just added about 2.5 cups, and 1 small, like 100 count size potatoes. If the 100 count's the word we use in the restaurant business, that means 2 per pound, basically. So if you need to weigh and want to know the approximate size, if you can put 2 potatoes in a little scale thing at the grocery store and they equal a pound, then you're probably about the right size for what we're using. We're going to bring that to a simmer, and while that's coming up to a simmer, we're going to do the old fancy world famous shucking of the corn. Now, had I thought ahead, which is not really my forte, I would have done this before I arrived. But since I like shucking corn, and I think everybody does.
Yeah, who doesn't?
Yeah, everyone likes shucking corn, Nico especially.
Aw, shucks, Nico.
Oh, shucks. For reals.
Somebody does want to know where your restaurant is.
My restaurant is in Old Town Scottsdale, south of Chaparral, on the west side of Scottsdale Road in the Optima Camel View building. If you haven't been by, or if you haven't seen it before, if you're driving down Scottsdale Road, you may notice a large condo building with all sorts of glass and steel, kind of Frank Lloyd Wright-ish looking a little bit, I guess you would say, with vines and all sorts of patios and stuff. That is the Optima building, and we are at the ground floor facing Scottsdale Road. We are open Tuesday to Saturday, starting at 5 p.m. And unfortunately, we have no menu, so you'll have to come and let us improvise for you.
That's why he was laughing about the no recipe. But it's a very cool restaurant, so if you're in Arizona, definitely recommend it.
Absolutely. It's for everybody, too. You might think to yourself, like, wow, that sounds a little scary. But staring in front of me, I have a vegan, right? Megan's a vegan. And Beth, who's a pescatarian, although somebody said that you might be able to get her to eat turkey. But
maybe.
Don't let Megan hear that.
No, we got the Megan cam on right now.
So we can make a wonderful dinner, multi-course tasting menu dinner for just about anybody. In 3.5 years, we've never not been able to wonderfully accommodate whatever lifestyle, health restriction, or dietary restriction you have or may have. So I'm going to go ahead once again and use my handy dandy Ben Reiner. Get off as much corn as physically possible. How are we doing on time, folks? Are we okay?
We're about 45 minutes in, but...
All right. All you guys who are ditching work for the internet right now, nobody's gotten in trouble yet? Okay. Good. Just think you can go home and make 4 different things in under an hour. That'll work good. It helps if you have a good sous chef. Beth's cousin James is not here today. Normally he helps out quite a bit. Jeff. Oops, sorry.
But his brother's name is James.
Oh, okay.
You went too far off base.
From the grand scheme of 6 degrees of separation, I was just...
You were right on target.
Sorry. He's just such a nice guy. I feel bad that I got his name wrong. So, one of the other things you can add if you want to, maybe a little bay leaf. You don't always need bay leaf in every single soup that you do. The cosmos will survive without it sometimes.
Do you ever recommend doing that process after you've cooked the corn?
After you've what?
After you've cooked the corn?
You can do it, but your corn's going to probably just explode because once you've cooked the corn, all the juices in there have kind of loosened up and the starches have turned all juicy and yummy.
Yeah.
And so that when you eat corn on the cob typewriter style, ching, 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 you know how it gets all splashy and yummy and gooey, probably will leave most of the good stuff all over the place instead of in the soup.
That makes sense.
This has a lot of nice, sweet, yummy starch to it. So we've got our corn. Again, you don't need to cook this. This is corn. It cooks relatively fast. So you don't need to let this simmer in a pot on the stove for an hour. This is one of those things you could probably do for about 8 to 10 minutes, making sure that you're converting all those sugars into a nice, tasty broth.
That looks really good.
Yeah, so far so good, huh?
Now, is there a way, when you said you were sweating the fennel and the onions, should it have a certain look to it? Should it
translucent. It should look translucent, and it should look a little watery or syrupy. You're not trying to cook the liquids out and then caramelize the liquids or caramelize the surfaces of vegetables. You're trying to get them just to leach a little bit of liquid, and that increases the flavor quite a bit. Your mirepoix is going to be the base for everything else that we are going to do. So I guess while we're waiting for that to simmer, we can always cook up the last couple of corn fritters, right? Since corn fritters are so yummy. You know what? I should even be like a super nice guy and do a couple of these. If somebody wants to go grab me another pan, I'll use regular oil. So it's like, oh, there's an egg in there.
Another pan. All right.
I can have vegetarian but not vegan. Sorry, Megan. But yeah, so we've got, again, beautiful fritters, great soups, a little sorbet and ice cream. I'm sorry I forgot the finished product on the ice cream, but shoot me. You know.
I think we all know what sorbet looks like.
Sure, I guess you're right. Let's
Use the power of imagination.
through the power of imagination. Imagination's fun.
It is. You've done foie gras sorbet before too, right?
No comment.
Oh, just kidding. Maybe it was faux foie gras.
It was faux gras.
Faux gras.
I use soybeans.
Soybeans.
Yeah. I hear foie gras is illegal in California.
Yes.
That's okay. California knows best, clearly. They have beautiful beaches.
They do.
I'll be there next week. Woo-hee.
What
Not on
area?
the beach though. You guys don't want to see this body in the beach. It's not where we're at. I get paid for my skills cooking, not for my looks. So, alrighty. Well, once we get our soup all simmered down, and we feel like we're in pretty good shape, give it a stir. I'm gonna add a little salt.
We just got a quick glimpse of Nico.
And we've got here some heavy cream. Oh, no, we don't. That's why we're using potatoes. Heavy cream, once again. You can if you want. If you're really, really into like super duper 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 creamy corn soup. But I think the corn's creamy enough, and if you want a little more silkiness, just go ahead, add the potato. It takes you a lot further than you think it does. So now we're gonna take this off the heat. Let it sit for a second. We want it to cool briefly. We can obviously stir to increase the speed at which it cools. La-di-da-di-da-di-da-di-da. Sometimes you can sing if you want to sing while you cook. Works nicely. You know what song works really well when you're cooking is that Call Me Maybe song. All your friends will love you because you will put a song in their heads that will be in their heads for like a week. Right? Sometimes my wife plays that song for me when I wake up in the morning. We haven't seen her for a few days. She's gone missing.
Nothing better to wake up to.
Right? I prefer dogs licking my face, actually. Wake up, Daddy. All right. Keep an eye on our last-ditch corn fritters here. We've got our last little bit of elote here. Kind of finishing up our wonderful stuff. Now, again, there's a lot of funky seasonings you can use with corn. You can use onions and chives, fennel that we talked about, tarragon. A lot of those slightly licoricey things are great, but so is citrus. I like a little acidity. I've done lime over the top of things. Anything spicy, again, it's sweetness. So when you think about things that go with sweet, that's always kind of a nice way to say, okay, what goes really well with sweet items, salty items, spicy items. They have a lot of freedom to go within there. Now, you're also thinking to yourself, well, chef, I really like to, wow, I'm making a mess here. See, that's what happens when you get impatient, is you ruin stuff. There we go. Nice. So, you're thinking to yourself, chef, I really, really like to drink wine with my food. Do you have any wine pairing suggestions for corn? Why, yes, I do.
I was thinking that.
You were. I was thinking like light lager beers are always amazing. Lagers are great. Mexican Sol is a great beer. Corona, especially with spicier stuff. I really like the Sunbrew Kolsch from our local brewery, Four Peaks, is great, especially in the summertime. Again, another really scrumptious beer. And then you think of, with wine, think of like flavors and like profiles. Some people pick up the flavor of popcorn in California Chardonnays. Popcorn and corn. Why not? Like flavors, like ideas. German wines, Rieslings, things that are lightly sweet. German wines have Rieslings have different degrees of sweetness when they're grown in Germany. And sometimes can be a little confusing whether you hear like Auslese, Spätlese, Trocken, all these different words that you might not know. So here's a great way to cheat. Go to the wine shop and ask for an Alsatian Riesling from France. These will generally be dry, unless what you're looking for is a sweeter Riesling. Alsace is kind of the German part of the French-German border, and all the wines have been made in much more of a French style for longer. So if you're looking for a dry Riesling, that's it. If not, any Spätlese, nice Spätlese German Riesling is going to have a lot of balance too. Spätleses are a touch more expensive than QBAs. A QBA Riesling is something that's I'm not going to go into it, but it's kind of a more standard Riesling, simple. A Spätlese is a little tougher, a little higher end. But again, for 20 bucks, you can get yourself a pretty superior wine that goes with a lot of this food. Wow. So the last thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take our soup.
Oh, we have one question in the chat.
You go right ahead. What's the one question?
Did you use a sweet wine in the recipe, or?
I did not, but you actually could. If you want to kind of jack up the sweet. You know what might be nice to use the sweet wine is in the wintertime if your corn is not in season. That way you could kind of, if you still want that flavor and you want the kind of the idea of eating a sweet corn soup, but you don't have perfect sweet corn, maybe it's a little starchier, yeah, throw a little sweet wine in there. That's kind of a good little go-between. Okay. I used to know somebody who will remain nameless who in the wintertime, when vegetables weren't at their peak, would use a little baby food in concentrates, because baby food is always made at the peak of season and is usually sweet because babies like sweeter things. So it was an interesting trick. Again, I'm rocking the Vitamix, so this doesn't take all that long. But if you're doing it at home, go to a nice smooth paste. If you want it strained, strain it. I don't see the need if you let it blend long enough. You just go back. Once you've got it all done, go ahead and put it in another container, and just like with everything else when you're cooking, make sure you taste.
With a small spoon like that, too.
With a small spoon. See if you need salt. See if you need a little acidity. If you want a little acidity to kind of, if it tastes really, really rich and sweet, and you need some acidity, go ahead, take your lime, sprinkle a little lime juice. Need a little more sweetness? You know, you can sprinkle a teeny little bit of sugar in if you want. Add a little salt if you want some salt. Stir, stir, stir. Or even if you want a little heat. Remember, we started with a little chorizo spice earlier. Add a little chorizo spice. Maybe if you just want a little powder of chorizo spice to garnish, go ahead and garnish with a little teeny bit of chorizo spice. Nice. Give it a last minute taste. And pour it into shot glasses for all your friends. Add vodka, and you've got vodka sweet corn shooters. No, just kidding. Maybe you can add vodka Jello shots with your sweet corn.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Can you use an immersion blender?
You could, especially if you have a strong immersion blender. That way you don't have to dirty up every blender and 10 containers in the house. But yes, you can absolutely positively use an immersion blender. Okay. So that's kind of our rundown for today. We've kind of done some dishes. We won't look at the ones that I just did here because I got a little impatient. Those are the ones we'll be having for dinner tonight. So
nice.
But if you have any questions, go ahead and contact me, email us here. Thanks for joining us today. And just remember, eat local, think local, fresh ingredients, and do as much as you can with sweet corn. And if you got a 7 or 9-year-old to hang out and help you shuck, more power to them. Keeps everyone busy. Have a great afternoon. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Cheers.
Thank you to Chef Josh, and thank you guys for tuning in. And you can check out his restaurant at poshscottsdale.com. And also follow us on Facebook because we're going to post some trivia and we're going to give away one of Josh's really cool Posh passports. So we'll put a little more information on it, but you can essentially win prizes with this and get discounts on dinner at his restaurant. So be sure to follow us on Facebook and we'll post the question there. And we'll be back next week too, next Tuesday, 3:30. Thanks again, guys.
That's a little out of your league, don't you think?
The whole salmon.
You do have a backup plan, though, right? You know, like catering. Do they even like fish?
Make your meals, even the ambitious ones, come out just right.
You're actually enjoying this, aren't you?
The power, finesse, and ease of Wolf cooking instruments
leave
no room for doubt.
You've changed.